Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us here this evening for our student finance webinar. Hopefully you are all keeping well. My name is James Casey. I'm a Schools and Colleges Liaison Officer here at Royal Holloway, University of London. It's fantastic to be here with you this evening. I'm also joined by the lovely Ellen. Ellen, would you like to introduce yourself as well?
Hello everyone, good evening. Yeah, so my name is Ellen Duane. I'm also a Schools and Colleges Liaison Officer at Royal Holloway. And yeah, really excited to do this session today with you.
Fantastic. So the structure of this evening's session is Ellen's going to be presenting for around half an hour to 40 minutes, hopefully giving you some really useful information on all things student finance. And then hopefully for the final end of the session, we do have some pre-submitted questions. But also, if you do have any questions that pop up at any point during the session, please do submit them via the chat or questions function. And then hopefully we can go through them together in the final section of the webinar. But for now, I'll pass over to Ellen, who hopefully will lead you through some fantastic student finance advice.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, James. Again, hello everybody. I'm going to stop sharing my webcam just so that we can focus on the presentation slides for this portion of the session. So I'm still here. You'll be able to hear my voice, but you won't be able to see either of us if that is okay. So just bear with me 1 second, and then you should be able to see my slides. So James, would you mind just letting me know if you can see those okay?
Yeah, all looks perfect. Thank you, Ellen.
Fantastic, brilliant. Okay, so welcome everybody. So as you know, we are presenting this as both employees of Royal Holloway, so that you've probably heard of Royal Holloway before if you've joined this call. But just a brief introduction to us if you haven't. Some statistics there, some numbers that we're really proud of here at Royal Holloway, including being the top 30, one of the top 30 universities in the country, including our high numbers of student clubs and societies that we have. And then if I go to the next screen here, I can show you just a selection of some of the courses that we offer. We've got over 250 different undergraduate programs on offer here at Royal Holloway. So if you have applied to us and you would like to know more about the course you've applied for, if you haven't applied to us yet, but you want to know more about potentially applying to Royal Holloway in the future, please do just pop some questions that you have in the chat to get to know a little bit better, and we're happy to answer them at the end, and yeah, go through anything. So don't worry if your question isn't student finance related, if it's Royal Holloway related, or if it's university related in general, we're here to help. So on to what I'm going to cover today. So I've split this session really into 4 individual segments. The first is talking as a kind of general introduction into student finance as a whole. So what is student finance? What is the student finance system, as we kind of refer to it as that? What are student loans? What are the costs of university, and how do they work? Then I'm going to talk about repayments, because of course student loans don't work if there is no repayment system in place, because otherwise they wouldn't be a loan. So we're going to talk specifically about how they work. We're then going to talk about other ways students can fund their studies, such as scholarships, bursaries, and more. And then finally, at the end, I'm going to just talk a little bit about managing your money in a university environment, some kind of tips and tricks that will hopefully be useful for you. A little bit of a caveat, which I will mention as we go through, but something just to keep in mind is that this information is very much targeted at UK-based students. So what I mean by that is students who are going to be paying UK tuition fees for their course, whether that's at Royal Holloway or another UK university. This is decided by the government guidelines in terms of what counts as a UK or a home student versus what counts as an overseas student. So overseas student finance is going to be different. The student finance system is not going to be available in terms of student loans for the majority of overseas students. It is only going to be available for home students. So please do note that this is going to be targeted mostly towards home students. Okay, so let's get straight in terms of talking about what student finance is. And what I wanted to start with is a lot of common myths and kind of claims that I hear. As somebody who speaks to students like you pretty much all day as my day job, I speak to parents, carers, teachers, and quite often I hear the same worries or questions about student finance and the cost of university. I'd like to hope that today I've shown you that not all of these are true, and certainly it's obviously going to depend on everyone's situations for some of them, but generally I'd like to say that the majority of these are actually myths. So the myth that you can't afford to go to university is a big one. As I said, looking specifically at home students, so UK students going to UK universities, all students should be eligible to receive a tuition fee loan and another loan as well called a maintenance loan to help you cover the costs of university. So that system was designed to ensure that students from any financial background can access university, and therefore should remove the kind of overall question that you may have in your head of, the cost of university is going to be too great for me, I just won't be able to afford it, therefore I can't go. That barrier should hopefully be removed through the help of student finance. The question of the debt being unmanageable or not worth the cost, this is going to be an individual thing, of course, because some people might judge one thing as manageable or worth it when others may not judge it as manageable or worth it. I can't decide that one for you, but what I will say is that there is going to be a specific way to pay off your student loan that is different to any other loan you've heard of before, and that this debt or the stuff that you owe is going to be wiped from your records after a certain number of years. So, like I said, we'll get into more details of that, but just so you know, it's not necessarily treated like any other debt or money that you've borrowed throughout the rest of your life. It is a different way of paying back. And finally, I just want to reassure you that even though when you go to university, you may be taking the big step to be financially independent for the first time in your life and doing something that's a little bit different, like managing your own money or writing your own budget, you are absolutely not all on your own if something does go wrong. Plenty of universities, including Royal Holloway, will have financial support teams in place for students, who you can go and speak to them about, planning a budget, or if there's any financial hardship that you come into, they may be able to offer you a grant or a short-term loan to access, monetary funds if you need it. So please know that if something does go wrong in terms of your finances while you're at university, you're absolutely not all on your own. So what is the student finance scheme? Well, as I mentioned earlier, the scheme is really set up by the government. It was set up by the government a few years ago, many years ago now really, to allow students from any financial background to access university, meaning that there wasn't a financial barrier, i.e. the cost of a tuition fee, to stop you from going if you were from a financial background where you weren't able to afford that. The student finance system is managed by Student Loan Company and Student Finance England. Now, there are other branches of student finance, Northern Ireland, Wales, Scotland, but this depends on where you are living as a student. So if you go to a university in Wales, but you are living in England currently, then you will still use Student Finance England. You will not use Student Finance Wales, because it depends on where you as a student are living. So the majority of students probably on this school will be going through Student Finance England. And if you would like to access a student loan, you will need to apply for student finance every year before you start your degree. So those of you that are looking at starting a degree with us at Royal Holloway later in 2023, maybe in September, you will actually be able to apply for your student finance now. And once you have completed your first year, you'll be able to apply again for your second and third year. Let's take it back and look at the two main costs of university, the two main segments of where you're actually going to spend your money, and then see how the student finance system is going to help us pay for them. The first one, the major one most people associate when we say cost of university, is going to be tuition fees. They are going to be the cost of doing your chosen course at your chosen university. Your tuition fees are going to vary, and by that I mean they vary depending on the university that you go to, and one main factor, which of course, as I mentioned at the beginning of the call, is going to be where you are from. What I mean by that is that there is two very distinct categories. One is a home student living in the UK for over a certain number of years, and an overseas student, a student who has not lived in the UK for over a certain number of years. And the cost of your tuition will vary depending on if you fit into one of these boxes. Universities are able to charge a different variety of amounts for tuition fees, but the government caps the amount they're able to charge for a home student at a maximum of £9,250 per year. So you may find that some universities charge slightly less than this. Generally, most universities tend to charge very close to the full amount, so there's not going to be too much variety. but it is an absolute maximum of £9,250 per year. And as we know, it's normally 3 years for an undergraduate degree course, maybe longer, 4 years if you're doing an integrated master's, a placement year, a year abroad, etc. That can extend that time at university, and therefore would have an increase on your tuition fees. So that's £9,250 per year for home students. For overseas students, the amount varies greatly. It can vary depending on the course you're doing, the university. So I would really encourage you to check it out if that does apply to you, and see exactly what tuition fees you will be expected to pay. The main way that students in the UK cover these tuition fee costs is going to be the tuition fee loan. I certainly didn't have a spare £9,250 in my bank account when I was 18 years old, and many of you probably won't either. And so in that case, you may need to get help from the government through the student finance system by getting a tuition fee loan. You may also be able to fund your tuition fees with scholarships or bursaries, which is what we're going to speak about later. Or you may have your own funding to pay for these. You may have funding from family, friends, savings, whatever it is. So usually it's going to be one of those three that you use to pay for your tuition. Let's talk specifically about how the tuition fee loan works. So the tuition fee loan covers the full cost of your tuition fee, so all £9,250, if that's how much it costs. It may cost slightly less, it may cost £9,000, and the government will then cover the full £9,000. You don't get to keep the excess, unfortunately. But rest assured, your full cost of tuition fee will be covered if you're eligible for this loan. That student loan gets paid directly by the government, the student loan company, to the university that you are attending, and everyone gets the same amount, so the amount is only based on how much your tuition fee costs. So that is paying for one major cost at university, aka your tuition fees, but what about everything else? So we've kind of lumped this in to one category called everyday spending, and that is really going to be anything that is involved in living at university. So these are general living costs that you might have now. You would also have these if you are, working or doing an apprenticeship, things like that. But of course, when you're at university, you're probably not going to have too much time to work, although we will talk about part-time jobs later. So you might be wondering how you're going to afford all of this everyday spending. So that could be your accommodation, your rent, obviously food, social life, shopping, all those kinds of things outside of your basic university tuition fee. One way that students can cover the costs or put towards money from these costs is from a maintenance loan, which is the other type of student finance provided by the UK government. So its full name is the maintenance loan. It's also referred to as the cost of living loan or the everyday spending loan, kind of a variety of different nicknames. But yeah, officially it's called a maintenance loan. Students who have extra needs, such as students with disabilities or students that are carers, may be able to get extra support from the government for their living costs. You can also use bursary or scholarship money towards your everyday spending costs, and you may also be able to use your own funding, of course. So we mentioned part-time jobs, but also if you have savings, money from friends and family to put towards this, you can as well. Let's talk about the maintenance loan and how that works, as this is probably the one that requires a little bit more explanation than the tuition fee loan. That is because the amount that you are able to get from the government as part of this system differs depending on your situation. So again, first one is going to be where you're from, and that is the question if you are a home student or an overseas student. Typically, overseas students are not eligible for most types of student finance loan, including the maintenance loan. The other thing that it depends upon is going to be where you're studying. So students that go to university in London are entitled to a higher rate of maintenance loan called the London rate. This is based on the assumption, again, by the government, that those who go to university in London have higher living costs than those who go to university outside of London. If you are considering coming to Royal Holloway, you may know that even though we are a part of the University of London, our campus is based in Egham in Surrey. But because we're part of the University of London, all of our students are entitled to the higher London rate of maintenance loan. So while we're not based in central London, our students do get the higher rate of maintenance loan, which can make a difference. It also depends on whether you're going to be living at home while you study or whether you're going to be moving out. This is again done on an assumption that if you are living at home, you will have less living costs compared to if you move out on your own. And finally, the maintenance loan is also partly based on your household income. A household defined as the place where you spend the majority of your time. So if you have parents who live in different houses and you split your time between them, it's going to be where you spend the most of your time. And the reason that this system is kind of in place, in the theory behind it, is that those who come from lower household income families are able to get more money to borrow from the government to support their living costs more. I should say with that as well is that this doesn't take into account things such as, if your family has a higher household income, that means you're eligible for less loan, but they don't necessarily take into account of whether or not your family is going to be able to give you money to contribute towards your living costs. So it's really important that you have a conversation with your family, your parents, your carers, whoever your household is, to know exactly how their household income is going to affect you and your student finance applications in terms of, what you're going to be working with and what support you may need. Your maintenance loan gets paid to you directly, so it goes straight to your bank account 3 times a year while you are a student. So that will be September when you first enroll at university, January when you get back after the winter break, and then April as well. So that's 3 individual payments throughout the year. The next payment after April isn't going to come until the following September, so you do have to pay attention to the fact that you'll have a slightly larger gap between payments over the summer, but that may also be the opportunity for you to do something like get a job, a vacation job, part-time job, or something like that. Let's have a look at the amount of maintenance loan I guess, example payments that some students have been getting. This is going to be for the 2023 entry, so anyone that is looking at starting Royal Holloway in September, these are the amounts that you may find familiar. Everyone's is going to be slightly different. Of course, all I've got here is kind of a general example of a household income down the left-hand side. It's very rare that your household income is going to add up to a nice round number, but it's just used as an example, and it's on a sliding scale. Okay, so you can see here, just as an example of all those factors I was just mentioning, that the kind of highest amount of maintenance loan would go to students who are going to university away from home in London. So Royal Holloway, again, would count as that, and who had a household income under £25,000 a year. And then the lowest amount would be to students that were living at home to go to university and had a household income that was higher than £65,000 a year. These amounts are across an entire academic year, and so you can see that they really do vary depending on your circumstances. So it's really important to have an idea of how much you're going to get. The government has a student finance calculator. It's literally gov.uk/student finance calculator, where you can go on to input your details and see an estimation of how much you will get. Again, it's good to have a look at these numbers and plan ahead, because it may be the case, and it is often the case, that many students, the amount that they are getting from their maintenance loan does not cover their full living costs. So they may have to look at other ways that they are able to fund their studies, other ways that they are able to get money, and that's something that you have to consider. It's good to know before you start university. I mentioned other government support very briefly, so just to look at it in a tiny bit more detail, the disabled student allowance is probably the one that many people may not have heard of, but could benefit the most students. I'm going to talk about that specifically next. Travel grants are for people that are going to a year abroad or anything involving travel as part of their degree and need support for things like visa or insurance costs. And if you're from a low household income, you can get that from the government. And those that may have dependents or children may be able to get dependents and childcare grants to continue with your study. The Disabled Students Allowance covers a whole variety of conditions, so please do not write yourself off if you maybe see the word disability and don't associate with that. There's going to be a whole bunch of conditions that are covered. It works in the way that the government is able to help provide money towards things that will assist you with your education while at university, alongside your disability or your health condition. So if there is a particular software that you need to buy in order to assist you, if there is, if you have a visual impairment and you need, some assistive kind of equipment, then the government can look at funding that for you. So it's really kind of useful funding that you can get. This is absolutely by no means all of the conditions that it cover, but it's just an example of some of them. So please do look into the DSA if that applies to you. How do you apply for your student loans? Applications are now open, so you don't need to sign up for the mailing list in advance. In fact, you can apply right now if you are starting university later in 2023. You do not need a confirmed place at university to apply. Instead, we recommend that you apply with your top choice university and course, and then if anything changes later on, for example, you might have a conditional offer and be waiting for results day to confirm your place, you can change those details with student finance later on. It's very easy to do, and students do it all the time. When you apply, you can apply for the tuition fee loan, the maintenance loan, or both of them. It's totally up to you. If you don't need a loan, you don't need to apply at all. This is a general kind of overview of the process. You'll need to set up an account on the government website, and then your parents will be asked, or your carers, your household, whoever lives with you will be asked to support your application. They will have to provide the details about your household. You'll be asked to fill in details of the university and course. So again, choose your top choice, university and course. You'll be asked to provide your bank details, very important one, because they need to make sure that the money gets sent into the correct bank details, so there's no issues when you start university with getting that money. You'll be sent a declaration with details of the amount that you are able to receive, and then you will just need to sign and return that, and then hopefully sit back and relax, and the tuition fees go straight to your university, and the maintenance loan gets paid directly to your bank account. If anything changes, if you go through clearing and end up going to a different university or course than the one that you applied for, or if you decide you want to defer and go to university the following year, you just have to get in touch with student finance and let them know the situation, and they will then process the changes to your application. Let's talk about repayments, because I think it's really important you know, of course, that these are student loans and that there is a repayment system in place for them. I wanted to highlight a change that is a government announcement. It actually comes from about this time last year, actually, when they decided to make this announcement, but only now the full details are really coming through. It affects those students that are starting any time from September 2023. So if you are starting Royal Holloway later this year or another university later this year, this will apply to you. And it's really more about a change from the previous students' repayment terms that affects you. So if you have siblings or friends that have gone to university this year or any year in the past, then their repayment term year was different. Their salary threshold, which is the amount that they have to start paying back their salary at, was different. And their interest rate was also different. So I think it's really important to know that things are different for you guys now, and we're going to go through all of those individual changes as we talk through this session. So, in general, how do student finance repayments work? Well, you don't have to start repaying your student loan until the April after you graduate. Your repayments come directly out of your paycheck, just like a tax, and they are based on how much you earn. So very, very important factor here in what makes this loan very different to anyone you've got before. Most loans, your repayments that you make are based on how much you have borrowed, how much you owe, how much is left to pay back. The student loan, your repayments are based on how much you earn. So no matter how much you have borrowed, you are only repaying back a certain percentage based on your current salary, no matter how much is left to pay off on your student loan. And again, another factor that differentiates this from any loans, after 40 years, any remaining debt on your student finance is wiped. So that means that this debt can't be passed on to anybody. It is wiped after 40 years. You no longer owe any student loan debt. What we mean by you pay back based on how much you owe is that the government has set a salary threshold. They have set it for anyone starting September 2023 onwards at £25,000 per year as a salary, which translates down to these two amounts per month or per week, because they will also look at your monthly and weekly earnings. And once you get to earn over these amounts, you only repay back 9% of what you earn over those threshold amounts. If at any time your income drops below this amount, you stop making repayments. Let's have a look at that in practice. So we've got Aaron here. They earn £25,000 a year, which is actually the exact amount of the threshold. Very convenient. So they will not pay anything back on their student loan, because 9% of zero is zero. And until they start earning more than that, they will not pay any more back. We've got Beth. They earn a little bit more. They are earning £30,000 a year, or £2,500 per month. And that equates to £417 per month over the salary threshold. So 9% of 417 is 37.53. So they pay 37.53 per month back on their student loan, which really is about the cost of a phone contract, might even be less than a phone contract, depending on how fancy of a phone you have. So it's not going to be something that they notice significantly in their monthly payments. It's not going to be something that is necessarily going to make or break their lifestyle choices or their cost of living. It's going to be another bill that comes out of their paycheck relatively easily and shouldn't be something that makes a massive difference to their finances. And that is why the system is set up the way it is. If you get a very well-paid job after university and you continue to earn more and more throughout your lifetime, yes, you will end up paying a significant amount towards your student loan, and your monthly payments will be high, but that is because your monthly salary will be high, so it will be based on the fact that you are able to afford them. If you leave university and you get a kind of an average paid job and you continue to get average salary rises and things like that throughout your career, yes, you will still pay off some of your student loan. It will come out of your paycheck in hopefully manageable chunks, and it won't necessarily make a difference to your future and to kind of your financial decisions. Interest is charged on your student loan, and interest is set by the government using the retail price index each year. The retail price index kind of is currently set based on March of the last year, so March 2022. So we are waiting for an update on what the interest is going to be this year. As you know, with everything that's going on in the economy at the moment, it is very likely that this amount is going to be up. It's going to be an increase so it's going to be higher than 9%. We'll wait and see what the government decides to do about that. They may cap student loan interest at a certain amount, but just so you know, interest is charged on your loan. However, the interest gets added to your loan just like any other things that you borrowed, so it just gets added to the general pot that you start to pay off. It is not charged on top of your monthly repayments. It doesn't look any different to your monthly repayments. It just gets added to the amount that you owe, and you pay it off in the same way, and in exactly the same way as any other money that you've borrowed through your maintenance loan or your tuition fee loan. After 40 years, all of your debt, including your interest, does get wiped. If you're wondering about average salaries and sort of where you would sit looking at that £25,000 threshold, you should know that the average lifetime annual salary of a graduate in England is £35,000. So that is a lifetime, so that's not necessarily what you'll be earning straight out of university. So you can see there that that would maybe be something that you're able to build up to that salary. So for a few years, you may find that you're not earning over the threshold, and you might have a few years where you don't have to make any repayments. That threshold is set by the government and does change. So depending on the circumstances, depending on who is in power, that threshold may go up, it may go down, but currently that's all the information that we have now on that threshold. Looking at, is university worth the cost? The latest research we have from the DfE in 2020 is that there is an increase in lifetime earnings as a result of going to higher education. It is higher for men than it is for women for a whole variety of factors, but maybe that doesn't need to be the case forever. But it is important to know that there is a lifetime increase compared to people that did not go to university. So if you're somebody that's thinking about, is university worth the cost? Of course, statistically, this is just data looked at averages of a whole. It's not necessarily the answer for everybody, but it's good to know. And if you're looking at employment rates, you can see that there is a higher rate of people that are working age graduates compared to those that are non-graduates that are in high skilled employment. So again, asking yourself that question, is university worth it? These may be some helpful statistics to help you address that. Right, talking a little bit about extra support that you can get and other ways that you can fund your studies. The main two things I really want you guys to think about are going to be scholarships and bursaries. Scholarships are going to be a chance for you to apply for an award as excellence or an ability in any other area that is competitive against other students. So you'll be applying for a set number of scholarships against other students. You'll normally write an application and tell us a little bit about yourself. You might look at your grades and things like that to apply for a scholarship. Bursaries, however, are going to be things that are awarded based on your personal circumstances. They are not competitive, so usually anyone who is eligible or meets the criteria of a bursary will be able to receive the award, which is fantastic, a great opportunity, and they can come for all kinds of different reasons. Showing you some examples of some of the scholarships that we have here at Royal Holloway, such as the Rising Star, which is a full tuition fee, reduction, let me just go back so we can see some of the more specific ones that might be based on individual subjects. Really, really worth investigating scholarship deadlines for the universities you're interested in. Some of these Royal Holloway scholarship applications may already be closed, some may be open still. So definitely have a look at the university's website to see exactly what is out there. Some Royal Holloway bursaries and examples of that. So cash awards for care leavers and estranged students. Also household incomes in a variety of different ranges can provide you with a cash award for every year that you study, which is a fantastic help. I'd really recommend you, as well as looking at the websites of the universities you're particularly interested in, looking at more general scholarship websites as well, because it's not just universities that pay for scholarships or bursaries. It can also be charities or external organisations. So places like the Scholarship Hub are websites I would definitely recommend you visit. You can see comparisons of different university scholarships. You can see they may be for particular courses. They may not be tied to particular universities. Definitely recommend looking into it. The Complete University Guide as well has comparisons of scholarships and bursaries if you are currently looking at choosing your firm or insurance choice. If one university has a scholarship for a certain amount of money and another one doesn't, that might make a difference in between which one of those you choose. And also websites like the Wellcome Trust and the Leatherhorn Trust are going to be fantastic places. They do have a bunch of different scholarship schemes to help students. So please do look into those if you think you might be eligible for bursary and if you'd like to apply for a competitive scholarship as well. When applying for scholarships, as someone who reads a lot of scholarship applications as part of my job, I really do enjoy reading them and hearing about students' kind of achievements. I'd really recommend, first things first, you check the deadline and understand when your applications are going to be due. Also that you provide the correct information. If we need to see, for example, your grades, or we need to see a teacher reference or something like that, please do attach it. And then finally, to take care with your application statement. So please don't treat your application statement like it's your personal statement and just copy and paste that from your UCAS application. Instead, read the brief, read the prompt very, very carefully and answer the question that you are asked. And this will do great things for your scholarship application, and hopefully it will mean that you don't get kind of you're not looked and taken through to the shortlisting stage where your applications are going to be looked at in more detail. Okay, so every scholarship application is going to be different. All universities are going to ask for different things, and sometimes even all scholarships are going to ask for different things. So pay attention to what you're being asked for. I know it can seem like an annoying bit of work at the moment, but it will definitely pay off in the future if you can get a fantastic financial award to put towards these costs. Briefly wanted to mention a little bit about part-time jobs, because I know that is a big thing for a lot of students. 74% of students in the UK are working a part-time job alongside their studies to supplement that maintenance loan. So the maintenance loan enough isn't necessarily going to be able to, fund their activities. So you can work on campus. For example, at Royal Holloway, we've got our shops, we've got our cafes, our bars. You can work in the library. You can be a student ambassador who delivers tours. Some of you, if you've been to one of open days, might have met them in their lovely orange t-shirts and been able to chat to them. That's actually a paid role. So lots of fun opportunities on campus, and many universities across the country will have a very similar scheme. You can work for an external company, of course. If you already have a part-time job somewhere and you want to transfer that to a new store or something like that, you might be able to do that. Just speak to your company and see if they have a branch near your new university. You can do things during the vacation. So if you don't want to work during term time, then perhaps you could focus your part-time work during the winter break, the spring break, and obviously the summer vacation. You get quite a lot of time off. So it might be that is when you focus on actually making some extra money that you can then use throughout the rest of the year. Speaking of managing your money and spreading it out throughout the rest of the year, I wanted to finish with giving a few tips on managing your money while at university. One of the common questions that I get asked is how do students spend their money? Where does it go? The biggest cost is, of course, going to be accommodation. You can imagine that is probably going to be the most expensive thing you'll be buying while you're studying at university, if you're choosing to pay for accommodation, of course, and not commuting. So 60% of your budget estimated, of course, could go on accommodation. That depends on what your tastes are, whether you have to have, you know, a certain ensuite bathroom or catered or self-catered or whatever it is. Your budget is going to be different depending on your type of accommodation, but it's probably going to take up quite a lot of your costs. And then the next two, this really depends on the type of person that you are and the type of university experience you're planning on having. Somewhere between, you know, 50, 60 pounds weekly on your food and your social life in each of those categories. You know, it depends whether you're somebody that really wants to, you know, go gourmet with their food choices, or if someone that's really, really just focused on, you know, nightlife and things like that. The cost can definitely be different for both of those. So again, look at around those numbers depending on your interests. And then finally, you're going to have things like transport. So again, if you're commuting, transport is going to take up a bigger portion of this percentage. But if you're having an occasional trip, for example, if you're at Royal Holloway and you're popping in, you know, to town, or you're going home every couple of weeks, you want to budget some money for transport. Books is also on here, but I would say generally don't worry too much about a budget for books. Most university libraries have got all of that covered for you, and everything will be available digitally. Do not make the mistake of thinking you need to buy textbooks or recommended reading before you get on campus, because that can sometimes be a big cost to you that is really unnecessary, as most of the material that you'll need for your course can be accessed for free through your university library systems, and quite often it's all digital anyway. In terms of balancing your budget, very, very basic budgeting here. Take exactly what you have as your income, so anything that you get through loans, scholarships, bursaries, part-time jobs, anything like that. And then you're going to kind of subtract your essential costs. So the things that are really classed as essential is going to be your bills, your rent, your food, and your transport. There shouldn't be too many course costs. Most things will already be calculated into your tuition fees. And then what is ever left from that can be your non-essential things. So the more exciting things in life maybe is what you can pay for with your leftover money. I really recommend that everybody has a little bit of time sitting down and planning their budget for university before they start. It doesn't need to be something expensive. You can use a budgeting app, you can use a spreadsheet, or you can literally just sit down with a pen and paper and write down your outgoings, your income from whatever source it's going to be, and dividing that up, whether that is per month, per week, per term, so that you know, because when you look at the amount of overall, you know, maintenance loan you might be eligible for, it's really hard to kind of look and think, okay, I'm getting, I don't know, £5,000. What does that mean? How much can I spend on my dinner tonight, right? So when you break it up into per week, how many weeks there are in a term, how much does that mean? How much of that is going to go towards your accommodation? How much of that is going to go towards this? How much extra money are you going to get from other sources? It all becomes a little bit more real and clear. So I'd really recommend that you work out a little budget. Nobody's saying that you need to have a very, very strict, you know, scary amount of I can only spend this much per day or anything like that. But having a general idea will really, really help you, and it will hopefully avoid you from making the mistake that a lot of students do, and this is probably still happening at universities up and down the country, which is maybe getting a little bit too excited with their first student loan payment, going to freshers events, spending a lot of their money on whatever it is, and then worrying about money for the rest of the term until that next student loan payment comes in January, because they haven't planned a budget or they don't have an idea of how much they'll be spending. So definitely recommend getting a little bit of budgeting done. In terms of money saving tips, I'm sure all of you have seen all of these before, so I'm not going to kind of linger on them too much, but just have a look for student discount codes. If you're going to be traveling a lot, use the 16 to 25 rail card, and you know, try and think about meal planning and planning in advance so that you can batch cook and save money. Finally, a word on student bank accounts. You may have heard a lot about student bank accounts. You may see student bank accounts being advertised to you. Basically, a student bank account is one that's designed for university students. Its main feature tends to be you have a fee-free overdraft, so an overdraft that you are able to use, meaning that you can go below zero on your bank account for a temporary amount of time without being charged. This is something that can be a useful feature. For example, if your student loan payment is coming in on Thursday, but you have to pay your accommodation on Tuesday, you can go below zero, and then when the loan payment comes in, it will top back up your account. It's not something that you want to be relying on forever, because using it without fees is a very temporary thing while you are a student only. You'll need to prove your student status when you open up a student bank account. But something that people quite often see about student bank accounts is that they may offer freebies. So you can see here that there's a comparison. This is from Save the Student. I'd really recommend Save the Student. They're a fantastic resource for student finance resources and links and useful comparisons. You can see here a few different bank accounts. Their overdraft fees, so 0% means 0% interest fee charged up to £2,000. And then their incentive or their freebie that they'll be giving you. So if you're planning on getting a rail card anyway, you can get a free 4-year rail card if you open up a Santander student bank account. So that definitely might be something that's worth considering. Right, so that is everything from my presentation. I am going to get these slides closed down for you now, and then we can move on to answering some questions. So I hope that has provided some useful insight for you. I hope it has given you answered a lot of the pre-submitted questions, because I know that I did read them all before, and I'm hoping that we've covered quite a few of them. I am just going to pass over to James and see if there's anything that we would like to answer.
Fantastic, thank you, Ellen. That was really, really informative. So thank you, fantastic. So we have had some pre-submitted questions come in ahead of the session. I think we have covered most of them within the talk. There's one or two that it might be helpful to go potentially back over, or just a little bit of added detail. And then we have had some submitted in the questions function as well. So first and foremost, this is quite a specific one, but it can apply to quite a lot of people. What if your student finance doesn't cover your accommodation cost? What would you advise in that situation?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this can be a really common situation, because it depends on your family circumstances in terms of how much maintenance loan you're going to get, and that may not cover the cost of your student accommodation. That is unfortunately a fact of the system that lots of people have to deal with. I personally was in this situation when I went to university as well. I was able to get a part-time job before I started university. I had a gap year, so I actually saved up a lot of money in my gap year. I'm not recommending that's what everybody does, but that was my situation. That's what I decided to do. So I was using savings from my gap year, and I was also working throughout most of my university experience to fund kind of my extra living costs. If this is your case, I'd say definitely look into part-time jobs, look into scholarships and bursaries 100%. I also received a scholarship while I was at university. That helped me a lot with living costs. Look at speak to your household, speak to your parents, and explain the situation to them. Obviously everyone's circumstances is different, so I can totally understand it may not be a case of your family being able to financially support you, provide significant financial support, but if you let them know, you know, this is the situation, this is what's happening, see if there's anything that they can do. But definitely I say part-time jobs, scholarships and bursaries are my number one recommendation.
Fantastic, thank you so much. We've had another one come in here. Can you apply for Student Finance England without knowing what uni you're going to get, or should you wait until you're 100% certain on your choice?
Yeah, absolutely. You're probably not necessarily going to be 100% certain until results day. So I would say definitely apply, even if you don't know what uni you're going to go to yet, but you will be asked to put down one course and one university as your application. So just make a decision of which one you're going to put forward, and if anything changes, even if the thing that changes that you've just decided, never mind, I don't want to go there anymore, you can let them know about the change. So yes, you can apply without 100% knowing which university and course. You just have to supply a university and a course, and if things change, then you can update them. And I would honestly recommend that you apply earlier rather than waiting. It can just reduce a lot of stress on you and worrying about things coming in time and stuff.
Fantastic, thank you again. There's one here coming in, quite a quick answer. When are tuition fees paid?
Tuition fees are paid if you have a tuition fee loan. The government pays the tuition fee straight to the university at the start of the academic year, so it will be September or October depending on your uni. If you're self-paying a tuition fee, then it depends on the system. Some universities have like an instalment system, so they might say, okay, your first payment is due in September, your second one is in February, and your third one is in May, for example. Every university is different because they all run their own finance systems in that respect. So if you are self-paying for your tuition fee, go onto a university's website and see what their policy is for paying tuition fees. But generally, you'd have to pay a deposit. So you'd have to have a tuition fee, kind of your first instalment of your tuition fees would be your deposit before you start. But that may differ on universities. But if you're getting a student loan, it's all done through the student finance system, and they get paid at the beginning of the academic year.
Fantastic. Next one here. How is accommodation paid? Does it come straight out of the bank account that my maintenance loan goes into, or do you need to pay it manually to the uni or itself?
So accommodation will be paid in the way that you choose. So when you I guess, apply for accommodation, you will be asked how you're going to pay for it. So they will ask you, just like if you're booking a hotel or something like that, or if you are paying rent, they will take your bank details as part of that process. So it is not automatically set up to go from the bank account that you use for your maintenance loan. You can obviously use the same bank account. That's normally what most people will do. Some people might have two accounts, one that their loan comes into and one that their stuff comes out of. That's absolutely fine. So there is no automatic link between where your accommodation comes out of and where the maintenance loan goes into. It will be up to you to tell your university where they will take the accommodation payments from. And again, accommodation payments are typically done in instalments, usually to align with the student loan system, 3 per academic year, but that again depends on the university.
Fantastic. We've had a question here around bursaries specifically. How do I apply for bursaries, or is there a specific website?
Yeah, so the Scholarship Hub will also cover bursaries if you're looking for a general website. But most universities, you actually don't have to submit an application. It's actually automatically done through your UCAS. So universities will choose factors that can be kind of determined from your UCAS application. And if in that application, let's say a bursary is given based on your postcode. If you're from a postcode from students that are typically underrepresented in higher education, your postcode that you use for your UCAS application will be used by your university to say, right, this person is on this list, they qualify as someone for this bursary, and then they will get in touch with you and say, we've got this bursary here, you've qualified for it, can you give us the bank details to send the bursary to? So typically you do not need to apply for bursaries. I would recommend, again, using the Scholarship Hub to search for bursaries, but then going directly to the university's website and seeing their bursary terms and conditions, because some may differ. Some may say you don't need to apply, but you just need to alert us. You need to just say, hello, just say, I am a carer, or whatever the criteria is, and then they can process that for you. So again, check the university's website specifically.
Awesome. Next one here around specific Royal Holloway scholarships. Does the Rising Star Scholarship differ depending on contextual offers?
The Rising Star Scholarship takes contextual offers into account when we look at the requirements for what you'd be asking for grade-wise. So I hope that answers the question. Yes, it takes contextual factors into account. If you received a contextual offer from us at Royal Holloway and you're applying for a Rising Star Scholarship, then the grades that we are looking for will be the contextual ones, not the standard offer.
Yeah, fantastic. Another one here, and one that lots of people may potentially find themselves in. If my first choice university is outside of London, and my insurance choice is inside of London, will the student loan company adjust to the higher loan amount later after I've started the loan application, or aka after results day?
Yes, on results day, yes. So you are responsible for telling the student loan company that you have changed your course, and so you've changed your choice. So when you apply, you'll only give them one university, so typically most will do their firm. And if you go to your insurance instead, you just need to get in touch with student finance and say, hello, I'm no longer going to XYZ University, I'm instead going to ABC University, and then they will update and they will then give you a new declaration with the new amount that you are eligible for, which if it was then inside London would be a higher rate maintenance loan. So as long as you tell them, they will adjust it for you, but it won't happen automatically, but it won't be until after results day. But they are very used to this, they've been doing that kind of thing for years, so they'll have systems set up, they'll have online forms you can fill out and things like that to let them know.
Fantastic. Sort of a similar question here, but slightly different circumstances. What if I declare on my maintenance loan that I want to live in accommodation, but then I decide to live at home last minute, aka I want to become a commuting student instead?
So just like any kind of financial contract that you enter into, with the student loan, you are basically declaring that everything that you've said is true. And that means you're also declaring to a commitment to inform the student loan company if there are any changes. So that would then be, again, up to you. It's your responsibility to approach the student loan company and say, just to let you know, I'm no longer living in accommodation, I will be living at home, and they will then adjust the amount. So if you've already taken the money, because again it's in installments, right, so you will have already probably had your first installment, depending on when you make this decision, of course, then it's very unlikely that they will ask you to repay it back. You'll probably be able to keep that element of that first installment, but your future installments for the rest of the academic year will be reduced down to that amount. They could ask you to pay it back immediately, but obviously given the fact that they can't force you to pay it back, then it will just be repaid back in the same way. So yeah, but you are under, when you sign the declaration, you are requested to inform the student loan company of any changes, including where you change to live. So yeah, it's under your responsibility to let them know.
Fantastic. Well, I think that's all the questions we've had come in covered. If you do have any further questions at any point, you can, of course, reach out to us directly. You can find more on our website. We are part of the Schools and Colleges Liaison team, so there are ways in there that you can contact us. If you do have a further question around admissions or anything like that, likewise, you will be able to find more details on our website. I should also add that this session has been recorded this evening, so hopefully if you do want to go back over it at any point in the next day, week, months, you name it, hopefully it will be on our YouTube channel shortly after today's session. And yeah, of course, you can recap anything that Ellen's covered or any of the questions that we've answered tonight as well. I'll give it just 30 seconds more to see if we have any final questions come in. And if not, then we will end this evening's session.
Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great rest of your evening, and hopefully see you at Royal Holloway in the next few months.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, everyone. Doesn't look like we've got any more questions. So yes, have a lovely rest of the evening. Thank you, Ellen, for presenting this evening, being the expert. And thank you as well for everyone at home listening in. So enjoy the rest of the evening, and thank you for joining us.
Take care.